Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Tuesday night. We are live and national. I'm breaking down the news of the day, what's going on in the culture, what's going on in the world, of course, what's going on in America at night. America. And here's our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And you know, for the past several decades, we've seen not only our institutions of higher education, colleges, universities, etc., completely corrupted, producing progressive activist students every year, more radical than the next. And this isn't just in colleges and universities. We see it in newsrooms across America. We also see it in journalism schools, or J schools as they're commonly referred to. They do the same exact thing, and they're replacing fact-finding with people that are intent on being activists that can control whatever information they agree with and then present it as the truth, their truth. Well, since Trump's reelection, I think this is pretty interesting, media organizations have been peddling whatever version of the truth, or what many of us call fake news, and it hasn't helped their ratings or their profits. And guess what? That was okay for a while, but a reckoning has come because, in fact, they've lost so many viewers, they've had to take action, right? And we're talking about a lot of things. I mean, they replaced the CEO of CNN. The CNN, as a result, replaced a bunch of different anchors. MSNBC and other peddlers of fake news they've dumped a lot of low-rated talent that were doing their own shows, like Don Limon. Who else we got? Joy Reid, Jim Acosta, Tiffany Cross, Chris Cuomo, and then some others that were doing their own shows, and they were kept on with the network, but they lost their show. Alex Wagner, Jonathan Capehart, Mehdi Hassan, and Brian Stelter was gone for a couple of years, and now he's back at CNN. And a lot of this is financial, dollars and cents, but a lot of it is reputation. When they were able to peddle their fake news and gain the attention or promote the propaganda that they were trying to promote, it was all good. Once the cat was out of the bag and people realized, you know what, I'm going to go elsewhere for my news because I realize that you guys are fooling me. You guys are telling us what you want us to know, not what's really going on. Now we have a change. And because of the civil rights violations that several universities have committed against students, now they've faced this loss of federal funding. Talking about Harvard University, Columbia University, and some others. And last week, we talked about this on the show with Rabbi Mencken from President Trump's Council on Anti-Semitism. Homeland Security. But he discussed this settlement, $220 million that they were willing to pay to kind of make good on some of the issues that had arisen. Well, now you've got Harvard desperate to restore the $2.6 billion in federal funds that have been frozen by the Trump administration for the same reasons, right? Ideological and political, as well as civil rights violations against students. Now they're saying they're open to paying a $500 million settlement to the federal government. And to that I could say, not too shabby, huh? Again, it's 6-7 months that Trump has been in office. Super. I think that's terrific. Trump is the leader of a movement. But make no mistake, you, I, and the rest of us are the movement, right? Americans, we the people, are the movement. This isn't about President Trump. And I think he reiterates that a lot. He often says, they come after me because the only thing between them and us is him. And that's true. So I bring all of this up because you look at the news, you look at the headlines, and there's just so much going out there. Yesterday, we brought you breaking news coverage all throughout the evening of this shooting that happened here in New York City. Very, very tragic. But you had the guy on CNN, their chief security analyst. He referred to the shooter as possibly white. Now, one could say, well, they didn't have information yet. He was just speculating on this. Well, A, how do you speculate as possibly white, number one? And number two, there's a photo of the guy, and he's got like a small afro. So now, look, I'm not going to say I'm automatically going to assume he's black, but I could pretty much tell you I'm not going to assume he's white. Maybe half white, maybe Puerto Rican, maybe Dominican, right? The point was he didn't look white. That wouldn't have been the first thing that I used to describe the guy. So why did they do that on CNN? Now, you could come up with whatever answer to that as you want, but I want you to hear this clip of their analyst. Listen to this.
They do not know who he is. They know he is a male, possibly white. He's wearing sunglasses. He appears to have a mustache. And that picture has been distributed to every police officer.
All right, so he's looking at the picture. Possibly white, he says. If you look at the picture and you see the guy, he appears to have a mustache. He also appears to have a small afro. I would start with that, right? I think if you tell me possibly white, I'm thinking someone that looks possibly white. This guy didn't look possibly. He looked possibly Hispanic, possibly Middle Eastern, possibly a lot of things, but possibly white wasn't one of them. And it just makes you think, if this is CNN's chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst, boy, are they in trouble. And moreover, their listeners are in trouble because these people are out of control. Now, I think a lot of people think that what's going on here is really a case of people just wanting to continue a narrative, right? There are certain race hustlers out there that have been peddling a narrative that makes a lot of sense for them because they raise money on this. They are able to assemble people. They're able to get a lot of momentum behind a movement. Right, it's kind of like any time there's a police-involved activity with someone that is not white. Immediately, there's a video and a claim, and even sometimes a lawsuit that comes out that says that this guy was attacked or unfairly targeted by the police, trying to create some sort of trend, like it's unsafe to walk around. And then, like clockwork, just after they say all the things they're going to say, there's always multiple body cam videos that come out, or eyewitness, or ring cameras, or whatever, some other video that shows the full story. And voila, there's always a full story of someone agitating the police, failing to comply with a reasonable order, all of these things. And again, I got to tell you, look, I'm from the 1970s, right? That's when I was born, late 70s. It was never a negotiation. It was never, hey, step out of the car, you're under arrest. Excuse me? I'm not getting anywhere. Call your supervisor. That wasn't a thing that you did. That wasn't something that you could get away with. It doesn't work that way in real life. And I think when you live life in fake life, you get these crazy outcomes. So I say all of this because it is high time that people are doing what they're doing. And there was an event today, a private event on Capitol Hill, about people voting with their feet. And they're talking about people leaving big cities, in particular New York, and leaving to Virginia, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, all these other places. And there's a reason that people are leaving. There's a reason that people don't want to be in these big blue cities. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about these trade deals and the rest of what's going on with the economy with our guest that's coming up in a little bit. He's a former economist in the Reagan administration, former economist in Trump 1.0, and former White House Economic Council member. And his name is Steve Moore, and he's coming right up, so don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And so people are voting with their feet. They want to leave places like New York City because why? Because you've got guys like elite Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City. He's, in my opinion, a terrible, terrible leader, right? He seems to never really know what's going on. He's always reacting to things instead of getting in front of the issues. And here we are. Right now, he's making the rounds in the media, letting people know what happened, his latest failure to keep the city safe. And again, I realize he may not have been able to, defend against this madman with a machine gun. I get that. If it was an M4 or an M1, some are saying it's an AR-15. I still don't have clarity on that. But irrespective, the reason people think they can walk around and do these crazy things in the first place and think, if you think you can double park your car and get out with a rifle and just walk around the city, if you know that that's okay, it's because you've been to the city and you realize there's no cops here. They're not going to do anything. They're afraid. Their qualified immunities are taken away. You get into a scuffle with a cop and you break a finger, you're not suing the city anymore. I mean, you'll still sue the city, but you're going to sue that cop individually. If he owns a house out on Staten Island or a house in the Bronx, now you can put a lien on that property if you win in court. That was never the case before. People were protected by their job. So you tell me which cop is now going to go the extra mile to get the bad guy if he knows, if this doesn't go right, if some prosecutor like Alvin Bragg doesn't have my back and decide to not prosecute this guy's going to come after me. So they're all just taking it easy. And that's never good. But that's exactly where we are. So Eric Adams now, he's making his little media tour, and he's talking about what happened with this guy and that apparently he had some sort of encephalopathy, a brain issue. Listen to this.
Tell us about the apparent suicide note that was in the shooter's pocket.
He alluded to having CTE from playing in the NFL. He never played in the NFL, and he alluded to the CTE being the reason for his illness. It appears as though he was going after the employees at the NFL. The building 345 housed the NFL's company there as well. But we're still going through the suicide note to zero in on the exact reason. But at this time, it appears as though something that is attached to his belief he experienced CTE from playing in the NFL.
Experiencing this brain issue from being in the NFL, a CTE. So again, we have no idea what's going on. Of course, this is where we cue our friends that are waiting in the wings with their theories on this, that this is MK Ultra. This guy is a pawn used by some sort of CIA actors to go and fulfill this hit on people. It'll be a couple of more days before we hear who these other victims were, and then say, oh, they had a connection to this, they had a connection to that, and this is just clean up in aisle 6, and they're trying to make it seem like whatever. I'm not saying that isn't true. I'm just saying that isn't reported at the time, and I have no way of getting into something like that, right, other than just making it up, and I'm not prepared to do that. But this is very unfortunate, right? And if the cover story, right, if we take it at face value, if we buy what they're selling, we're hearing about someone who's suffering from a mental health crisis, right, or even a physiological crisis as well with the CTE, which causes all sorts of things. And this person not being well enough to exist in society without shooting people, yet seemingly okay to go and get a gun and be prepared to pull off this type of interesting mission. So this opens a couple of questions, right? And these are legitimate questions. This is not me making any recommendation. This is really me asking questions. When we talk about people that are suffering from mental health. And we've seen a lot of that in New York City. You've seen a lot of it in a lot of big major cities. A lot of people, there's the Baker Act, right, where you can put a 72-hour hold on somebody if you think they're a threat to themselves or others. And, by court order, they are arrested and taken to a psychiatric unit. And they can be forcibly tied to a bed and medicated and calmed down and stabilized. And then after 72 hours, they have to go back to court or release this person, whatever the case is. And I don't like that law, to tell you the truth. I understand why it's there, if you don't know these people. And I'm always against anything that takes away my agency, my control over me, my body, my choice. Remember that? I don't want some judge to go, because just like with the red flag laws, when you create these types of laws that say, if you have guns, we can go take all your guns away if somebody reports you. Well, guess what? You know how much crap I talk on them every day on the radio? Just imagine somebody going, hey, go take Valdez's guns away. He just said X, Y, and Z. This guy's a lunatic. All you need is 3 angry Democrats in a row, a Democrat judge, a Democrat doctor, and a Democrat making the complaint to say, we can't have people like that. Let's go after them. And they go after you, just like they went after Trump. So what is a solution? What is a solution? What is the solution to something like this? Can these acts of terror be circumvented? Can we prevent these things? Right? Because the Democrats right away, you take away the guns, there's no more shootings. That's BS. And we know that to be true. Why? Because there was a dude stabbing people in Walmart. And he was stopped, thank God, by a good guy with a gun. Right? A Marine Corps veteran got in his face, got him on the ground. Somebody else came, held him down until the cops came. That's great. But what do we do? Right? So, I'm bringing that to you guys. I want you all, we the people, to weigh in on that before we get into other topics and conversations. Let me give you the phone number. It's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, we have some guests lined up that we're going to talk with as well. But I want to hear from you. I really want to get a sense of, what do we do in a situation like this? Because it's my contention that you cannot stop evil. It is a byproduct of living in this world. And that doesn't mean we don't do anything about it. You need consequences. You need as much prevention as you can have. But you have to stay within, the realm of our Constitution where we don't take away people's rights in order to protect them. That is not good. And I feel like I don't know. I don't know the answer, and I'm wondering, if you do. It's a genuine question on my behalf, because I don't think we need any more laws. We don't need any more people telling us to disarm society, to take the guns away, because New York City's already a gunless society. And look what this guy did. Came from Nevada or whatever it was. So that's not working. People that are bad are going to do bad things. And the only thing that's going to stop them are good people that have the same things they have, guns. All right, folks, keep it locked right here. I am Rich Valdez. We continue with you all. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
This week, top European Union leaders are traveling to Beijing for a high-level summit where they'll address everything from climate change to trade. The EU and China often find themselves at odds on a number of geopolitical and economic issues. But lately, they can agree on one thing: the need to counter President Donald Trump's tariffs.
EU nations, by and large, do want to de-risk from the US market because they see it as unpredictable. The official line from the European Commission chief, Ursula von der Leyen, is to de-risk as regards China. But that is not quite reflected in some of the individual EU member states, the governments and the government leaders.
So that's the latest on what's going on with the trade deals following what happened in Turnberry, Scotland, where President Trump scored a deal with the aforementioned Ursula von der Leyen. And I want to get into what the impact of this is going to be, in particular the geopolitical impact of it with the commitment of $750 billion going to the United States in a commitment for energy, as well as $600 billion going into the United States in terms of investment. And to do that, I want to bring in our guest, Steve Moore. Like I mentioned before, served as an economist in the Reagan administration, as an economist in Trump 1.0 administration, and he's the founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Steve Moore, welcome back.
Hey, Rich, so good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, Steve Moore, I want you to walk us through this because I think, there's so much trade news coming in that I think people don't know where to start or finish. So walk us through a little bit of what happened over the weekend before we talk about what we can expect to come out of Asia.
Well, what's happening, Rich, and this has been happening for the last 3 months now, is, and you know that I'm not a big tariff guy. I'm more of a traditional free trader. But I have to say I've watched what Trump has done, and I marvel at this because he's forcing other countries, whether it's England, whether it's the Europeans, whether it's Japan, Korea, China, Mexico, to stop discriminating against the United States, to create a level playing field because they're more punitive in terms of our exports of dairy products, our farm products, our technology, our manufactured items. And so it's been putting us at a disadvantage. And as Trump would say, we've been ripped off by some of these countries, and we're not going to take it anymore. So Trump is flexing America's economic muscle and saying, if you don't stop this discriminatory behavior against our products, you're not going to have access to our $20 trillion consumer market, which is the biggest market in the world, and every country has to trade with the U.S. So that's a long-winded way of saying Trump is winning on these trade negotiations. And the one that he announced, about 2 or 3 days ago with the Europeans is astounding because just 3 months ago, the Europeans said, we'll never make a deal with Donald Trump. And now here they are with a deal that is very much in America's interest.
Now, Steve Moore, I want you to listen to a quick clip that we have of Secretary Howard Lutnick explaining his take on the deal, and I want to get your reaction to that. Listen to this.
Sure.
France and Germany. And I'm not going to defer to the Democrats or legacy media on whether it's a good deal or not. I'm going to go right to who it really seemed to upset, and that's France and Germany. And even the European Commission president, you heard what she said. I thought it was very telling. She goes, look, I know this is awful for us. It's the best I could get. I'm trying to salvage them. So I think that indicates, and I don't want to be too jingoistic or America first, but to me that indicated that the president was able to get a pretty good deal.
Exactly right. The president knew how far he could go, and he went exactly that far. The thing about our president is he's got that intuitive nature when he's sitting across the table and making a deal. He knows how far he can push it. I mean, imagine they committed to $750 billion of energy purchases, natural gas and oil and nuclear, during his term. They committed $600 billion of companies investing in America, and then 15% tariffs. They will pay 15% pretty much across the board. And we, of course, have an open market to the $20 trillion European market. It's 5 times bigger than any other, Japan and India, 5 times bigger with 450 million people. It was a masterclass by President Trump.
So, Steve Moore, I think Secretary Lutnick hit the nail on the head here. Do you think this is a good deal that President Trump got?
Well, I have to say I don't know all the fine print details of it, so I don't want to, go too far in praising it. But I do think it does sound to me like a very good deal. And as I just said, Rich, I don't think if we had had this discussion 3 months ago, I would have ever thought the Europeans would agree to, a 15% tariff. By the way, their tariffs have been much higher than that, and to open up their markets to the United States. And so it's a good deal, and the look, I'm bullish on America right now. We passed the tax cut. We're deregulating the economy. We're producing a lot more energy. We've done so much to improve this economy. Now you get these trade deals, and remember, I can't even keep track of them, Rich. I mean, one day it's Indonesia, and the next day it's India, and the next day it's Japan, and the next day it's the UK. And what it shows is that Trump. Look, every country in the world has to trade with the United States, and Trump is using that leverage to get better deals for American workers. And, is it a dangerous strategy? Yeah, I think, I've had some sleepless nights. I remember back in April, when the market crashed, I think, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. And here we are 3 months later, and we've just seen a supercharged economy. So I applaud Trump. I think this is really a master work by him, as Secretary Lutnick was saying. And I hope we get more of these. And, I say that as someone who believes in free trade. Trade is the essence of what economics is about.
Yeah, listen, me too. I'm a free trader all day, every day. And I think that this is a very nuanced approach that we saw a little bit of in Trump 1.0, and people got nervous when washing machines became a little more expensive. And things are still a little more expensive, but I think the overall result is one that I think many didn't expect, and there's a lot of people pleasantly surprised. So kudos to President Trump. Now, Steve Moore, you mentioned how there's deals coming left and right, all sorts of negotiations. There's Asia now. The EU is going to Asia, and I want to get your take on that because I'm just curious to what you think is going to come out of it.
Well, I frankly, I don't know. I heard that clip you were playing earlier about the Asians, the Chinese and the Europeans saying, oh, we're going to make a deal and it's going to be a climate change deal. By the way, how stupid are the Europeans to think China cares about climate change? I guarantee you the President Xi, who's trying to take over the world, doesn't care about climate change. And I thought the only person who actually believed that was Joe Biden, but I guess some of the Europeans do. Look, we are going to go all in on producing America's energy. That's our oil, our gas, our coal. And that's infuriated the Europeans. But look, the Europeans have deindustrialized because of their climate change craziness. Look at what happened to Germany, Rich, a few years ago. They tried to go all in with, solar panels and wind power. And, that's been the manufacturing center of the world for so many years. And all of a sudden, they lost their industrial might. So that's not going to happen in the United States under Donald Trump, I guarantee you. I mean, look, climate change is so passé right now. We're talking about creating great jobs, making Americans richer, helping every income group in this country. And I think it was a detour. And by the way, the more we progress with technology and so on, the more likely it is that we can solve these problems when they come, like climate change. But that's 100 years off.
Right. Now, again, final question for you. Do you think that this deal that the framework is announced for with the European Union lays the groundwork or gives the president, or the United States, better said, the leverage that they need to push Russia? President Trump now cutting down the 50 days to 10 or 12 days, saying, look, enough is enough. Do you think he has that because he has this leverage now with them buying energy from the United States as opposed to buying $750 billion worth of energy from Russia?
You better believe it. That's almost a trick question because, the only thing that Russia really has going for itself right now is it's a major producer of oil and natural gas. But guess what? We have more of it than they do, Rich. You know that. We've talked about this on the show. We have way more oil and gas than they do. And so I thought it was almost sinister that, remember when Joe Biden came in, you remember the first thing he did? He killed the Keystone Pipeline. Yeah, he tried to slow down our energy production. And guess what, Rich? Who do you think that played right into the hands of? Oh, let's see, the Iranians, the Russians, the Saudis, all these countries that, have been traditionally enemies of the United States. So this is, I've always said, producing more oil and gas and coal here at home and nuclear power and in some cases solar, the more we can produce here, the less we are reliant on countries that are enemies of the United States. So in other words, it's not just a great economic policy, it's a national security policy as well.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Steve Moore, I want you to stick with me, come back and talk about why people are leaving big cities like New York and headed further south. So stick with me. Folks, we're coming right back with Steve Moore from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau, rising costs plus the pandemic-era shift to remote work, they're partly why Americans are fleeing big cities. And they're going way out, even beyond the suburbs, to a lovely place called the exurbs.
So people are fleeing big cities. Again, that report from the economic people at Zillow, one of those huge real estate websites. And I want to know why people are voting with their feet. What is going on with this exodus from big cities? Now, I know there's, the obvious. It's too expensive. Nobody wants to be around these big crime-ridden cities in many ways. But there might be more to it. And that's why I want to bring back in our guest, Steve Moore, co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, and, of course, former Trump economic advisor with the first administration and the Reagan administration as well. Steve Moore, welcome back. You heard this snippet of a report. What's going on here?
So, Rich, thanks for asking. And by the way, we have a new website that we really spent 2 years putting it together, and it's called votewithyourfeet.net, votewithyourfeet.net, because that's what people are doing all across the country. They're voting for, certain policies by moving to places that are an ideological fit for them. And so you didn't have the story exactly right there when you said, well, people are moving out of cities. That's not exactly right. It's partly right. People are moving out of cities, but they're moving out of cities in blue states. So what we found in our analysis was that there's been a massive migration, one of the biggest migrations in American history, out of blue states like New York, like New Jersey, like my home state of Illinois, California, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. And where are they going? I think you and your listeners know exactly where they're going. They're going to Texas. They're going to Florida. They're going to Tennessee. They're going to the mountain states like Utah, Montana, and Idaho. And so what's happening, and incidentally, what do you think Texas, Florida, and Tennessee, three of the biggest in-migration states, have in common? Do you know what they have in common, Rich?
No income tax.
Yes. You got it, my friend. No
it's my next move, too. Florida.
I laugh at my liberal friends and say, well, taxes don't affect behavior. Oh, they sure do. We've seen a huge, massive migration of people. Florida is just growing massively with people coming in from all over the country to pay lower taxes. Texas, same thing. And so the states like New York and New Jersey and, as I said, Illinois, California getting swept clean. Now, one thing I want to call your attention to, because I know you have a lot of listeners in the New York area. So as you know, one of the candidates for mayor, who's one of the leading candidates, may win. What's that? Mandani? How do you pronounce his name? Mandani?
I call him Mad Manny.
Yeah, I have a hard time pronouncing it, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yes,
he wants to raise
Mandani.
the highest. Yeah, so he wants to raise the highest income tax in New York City by another 2 percentage points. Now, do you know what city in America already has the highest income tax? New York.
That's
so
right.
This would be a total disaster for New York City. I really believe, Rich, that if they elected him and he did what he's talking about, New York, Wall Street would basically be gone out of New York. It would go to Orlando or it would go to Dallas. By the way, Dallas is creating more financial services jobs now than New York does. Did you know that? Because
no,
people
but
are
it doesn't
moving
surprise
away.
me.
So, yeah. So don't do it, folks. I mean, socialism sounds so wonderful, help people, share all the wealth and so on, but it never works. It never works in practice, and that's what our study shows. So I want to see, and as I said, I'm from Chicago, and I love Chicago, but I've seen how progressivism has destroyed the city, and you nailed it, my friend. It's crime, it's high taxes, it's bad schools, it's all of these things that have really made these cities cities of exodus.
Steve Moore, if people want to take a look at this new report that you've put out, how do they get it?
Yep. Go to, you can go to our website, Unleash Prosperity, or go to votewithyourfeet.com. And you can click on states. It's a huge map, and you could say, click on, what state do you live in, Rich?
I'm in Jersey.
Jersey. So you could say, I'm thinking about maybe moving from Jersey to Florida. A lot of people do. So you could click on New Jersey, and then you click on Florida, and the moving vans will go across the screen, and they will show you which direction the moving vans are going in. Which direction do you think they're going?
They're going to Florida.
They're going south. So you can really see where people are moving to from. It's kind of fun. It's very easy to use, and so it's amazing. So the southeast of the United States is now the dominant region of the country. Did you know that?
I could only imagine. I was in Nashville a couple of months ago. My nephew's a state trooper there, and I went to his graduation, and what I saw there was like Hoboken, for example, on steroids. And I'm from Brooklyn originally, and I can tell you, New York City's never recovered from COVID. When I was a kid, everybody knew a nightclub in New York City. Nobody knows a nightclub in New York City now because there aren't any big famous nightclubs because it's not a nightlife hotspot like it once was. The city needs a lot of help, and you're right, Mem. Danny's here to put the final nail in the coffin. Steve Moore, let everybody know how they can follow you, and again, give them the website.
UnleashProsperity.org. And by the way, Rich, we have the free hotline every morning. People should sign up for that.
Excellent newsletter.
Yeah, and it's free. So there's no reason not to get it, folks. It's free. Okay.
I love it. Steve Moore, thanks for being with us. I appreciate it. Good to chat with you like always. Godspeed, my friend.
Thank you, Rich. Have a great week.
You bet. Amigos, we shall return.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live and national. Another hour with you all. It's always a blessing to be on this microphone. And, of course, our phone number, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And President Trump announcing today that the 50 days that he'd given Russia is out the window. In fact, he said, I think we're going to cut it down to just 10 or 12 days. And we have some audio on this. Listen to this.
You mentioned that you would change the Russia deadline to 10 to 12 days. Has that started yet? Or when can we, see the official statement that is the new deadline?
I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you now. Do you want a big scoop?
Yes, please.
Everybody else, close your ears, okay? You ready?
I'm ready.
10 days from today.
Got it.
Okay?
Got it.
Good.
How do you communicate?
We have a scoop.
Thank you.
And then, we're going to put on tariffs and stuff, and I don't know if it's going to affect Russia, because he wants to obviously probably keep the war going. But we're going to put on tariffs and the various things that you put on. It may or may not affect them, but it could.
So that, again, President Trump on Air Force One today giving the scoop that it's going to be 10 more days or so before he imposes his deadline on Russia. And this was a good thing, right? This is, again, in response to the Kremlin, whose spokesman Dmitry Peskov said earlier today that Moscow has taken into account that President Trump's statement according to the conflict here. And they're going to do what they got to do, right? Basically saying, all right, we heard you. Thanks. Right? These guys are not always very, very forthcoming. But what he did say was that Moscow remains committed, there's a quote, committed to the peace process to resolve the conflict around Ukraine and to ensure our interests in the course of this settlement. And that was a translation provided by TASS News. Peskov said that Russia is interested in rebuilding ties with the United States, but that so far the normalization process is proceeding sluggishly, so they would like to see more momentum. Listen, this sounds like, this sounds like a guy who has no interest in a girl, and she's like, "When are you going to make me your girlfriend?" And him going, "Listen, we're still getting to know each other, right? Let's take it slow, one day at a time." That's exactly what it sounds like. Somebody's being led on. Now, in a post on X, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, a close ally of Putin's, who is the deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, said Trump was playing a game of ultimatums that could lead to a war involving the United States. Well, listen, I think that's the only thing these guys are going to understand, and I hate that. I hate that that's the case, but it doesn't seem like the only thing they want is to take what they want and leave me alone while I'm taking back Ukraine. I want it for me. Well, you can't have Ukraine, Mr. Putin. Well, then nuclear war, right? And they fold their arms. This is the game they play. Not very different than Hamas and the rest of his people, and look at how they had to be dealt with. So I don't know what the future holds for these guys, but I don't know. Maybe this big economic deal with the European Union is the leverage we need to get him to play ball. I don't know. Only time will tell. I'm starting to lean in the direction that Russia is not going to respond to anything but brute force because they're making plenty of money with their energy. They're making plenty of money selling bombs, and they just don't care, right? This is bigger than making money, right? Many countries, it's about making money, about gaining power. For Russia, it's about gaining power, but I think even beyond that, there's this personal investment in what Putin's written about restoring the Russian Empire. And unless he was lying when he wrote that, or he's lying at some point, right? He wrote that and said that that's what they would eventually want to do. So you can only take people at their word. Anyway, Medvedev continued, each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with Trump's own country. In recent months, during various talks that they've had, Russia hasn't accepted any ceasefire deals, with the U.S. trying to broker them. So what's next, right? I mean, we've now armed Ukraine on a loan that's being administered. At least the weapon distribution is going to be administered by NATO. I don't know what happens from here. I do know that the more we talk about this, the more tired we get of talking about it. People don't want to see this thing continue. I think everybody genuinely wants peace. And it's kind of like when there was a pandemic during the Obama administration. What was that, bird flu? I remember they just, after a while, to make the pandemic go away, they didn't ramp up testing. What'd they do? They stopped testing because every time they tested, they found more and more people were getting infected. So they were like, all right, we're just going to stop testing here. And once you stop testing, then you can say, for the last 90 days, we haven't had any new positive results of these. Well, obviously, because you haven't tested. But that's how they operated back then, right? So maybe that's how Democrats would have dealt with this, saying, oh, well, we haven't heard of any new territory being taken by Russia. So far, so good. I don't think that's what Trump is trying to do. So we're going to keep our eyes on this one, and we'll see what happens in the next 10 days. Excuse me. What else do we got here? Consumer confidence and unexpectedly jumps. Why? Rising hopes for jobs and increased business conditions. No, that's a good thing. I think it's fantastic. I think everything seems to be chugging away in the right direction for a massive economic comeback. And I mean massive. I don't mean like a little bit. I mean massive. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. I think we'll probably see it about 15 months from now, is my thinking, based on the current trend we're seeing. I think the big catalyst of this will be interest rates. Because I think a lot of people don't, I shouldn't say that. I think a lot of people I talk to don't realize the importance of these interest rates. And many of you do. So for many of you listening, bear with me because I know I'm preaching to the choir here. But you look at big stores, right? So our studio's in Manhattan. But when I'm not in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, by the way, World Trade Area, when I'm not there, I'm home. And if I want to go somewhere when I'm in North Jersey, which is, my house is physically like 4 miles away from Times Square on the Jersey side of the Hudson River. So there's a bunch of big box retailers and whatnot around here, and big, I don't know what they're called, convenience stores, I guess, 7-Eleven, Quick Check, Wawa, those types of things. And they don't make investment if they can't afford to turn a profit. So a lot of times when you see a new one of these convenience stores, people will say something like, oh, those are popular down south. Well, because real estate is cheaper down south. So in order for those companies to be competitive in a market like New York, New Jersey, the only way they're able to do it is if interest rates are low enough where they can get a good deal on their lease or on the land that they've bought. And oftentimes they don't buy it. They'll just they'll do a long-term lease. So what happens? You don't get the Wawa, you don't get the Quick Check, you don't get the 7-Eleven because interest rates are high and they're not going to take the mortgage, they're not going to do the deal. The minute the interest rates go down, they say, it makes sense. Let's be risky again. There's a chance to make money here. Same thing happens with the small guy. The small guy that owns, 2 or 3 multifamily homes and would love to have a fourth and rehab the place and rent it out and give people a nice place to live. But that guy can't make a move unless interest rates become a little lower so that he has less risk. Because if lumber is high and energy is high and borrowing money is high, then everything's too high for him to turn enough of a profit for it to make sense. So the only variable here are these interest rates. Now, what happens when 7-Eleven or Wawa or any of these big outfits decides to open a new place? Well, obviously, they have to hire new people. So there's new jobs. They have to hire a construction crew, a fire sprinkler crew, a flooring guy, all of that. Same thing happens when the guy on Main Street has to do it. He might do some of the work himself. Maybe he frames it himself. Maybe he lays down a carpet himself or a subfloor, but he's still going to call a flooring guy for tile, for wood plank flooring. Maybe he brings in a drywall guy. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does that too. He's going to call in a plumber. If he needs a new electrical panel, he's bringing in the electrician. And is he bringing in the union electrician from New York City that's putting up high-rises? No. He's calling John Q. Electric, the guy with a van that's parked in his driveway that maybe has 2 or 3 vans on the road if it's a mid-sized business. And guess what? Those guys employ people too. So now they're getting work. And, this is economics 101. All we have to do is lower these interest rates, and all of a sudden, everybody's buying a new piece of property somewhere. That's what's needed to really stimulate the economy. And Jerome Powell knows it. And this is why, in my opinion, he's hiding behind whatever he hides behind. Well, we've seen inflation cooling, and that's good, and blah, 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 and all the yin-yang. But Trump was right. And I'm glad Trump went there and had that whole hard hat speech with him, because we need to see a change there, and we need to see it quickly. Anyway, I want to get to your calls. I see calls from Canton, Ohio, Virginia Beach, Naperville, Illinois, Boise, Idaho. Lots of people on hold. We also have some conversation that we're going to have with Mark J Quann. He's scheduled to be with us momentarily, and we're going to talk about this golden era. Will people become rich with cryptocurrency? Is this the next gold rush in the United States? Well, keep it locked right here because we're going to come back and have that conversation straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A few years ago, the crypto world was in crisis. You had exchanges shutting down. You had founders being jailed. How did it go from that to 4 trillion? Thanks to American policy. Crypto has found a champion in Donald Trump. He wants to turn the U.S. into the world's crypto capital. Last week, he took a step in that direction. Trump signed America's first major crypto law. He called it the Genius Act, of course.
The Genius Act, they named it after me, and I want to thank you.
So what does this law do? It regulates one product of the crypto market, a product called stable coins. Now, these are different from other cryptocurrencies. Take Bitcoin or Ethereum. They don't have any intrinsic value like gold, nor are they backed by any government. They're valuable because people say that they're valuable. But that's not the case with stablecoin. Each stablecoin is backed by $1. Say you buy 100 stablecoins from a crypto exchange, then the exchange must keep $100 in reserve. And this makes stablecoins much safer. And this is just the start. 2 more crypto bills are in the U.S. Congress.
So that, again, is a report on what's happening in the world of crypto. And I think this is an important thing, right? And that was Palki Sharma, by the way. The show is called Vantage with Palki Sharma, excuse me. And I want to get into this because we talk about it at least once a week. I think it's important for us to talk about because every time I talk about it, I get feedback and people say, I don't know, it's a scam. And every time I hear that, I go, hold on. This is like saying, you know, when the Pony Express was vibrant, people saying, I don't know, I keep hearing about this telephone things, Alexander Graham Bell, I don't know, I think it's a scam. No, it's not a scam. It's a new way of doing things, and it's going to take over the rest of the future until cell phones come around. So I want to bring in our guest. He is the author of Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes. His name is Mark J Quann, and he's here with us now. Mark, welcome.
Good to have me on the show, man. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I understand that many companies are racking up Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency. In fact, even Trump's company, Trump Media and Technology Group, just made a big purchase. Tell us more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been following Bitcoin since about 2017 when I heard of a currency that couldn't be devalued by the government. It couldn't be controlled by the government. It couldn't be turned off by the government. I was like, I'm all in, and I've always been a Bitcoin guy. So, I mean, people don't realize that Bitcoin is actually the only real money we've ever had in the history of humankind. Money is simply something that we agree as value. It must be easily transferable, and it must have limited supply. We don't have real money. We haven't had real money since the creation of the Federal Reserve, specifically since 1971, when they took us out of the gold standard. We have pieces of paper backed by nothing that the government can steal our wealth through inflation. So I'm a big Bitcoin guy. I love it. I understand it. And, I own quite a bit of it. So
talk to us about big companies that are making moves and buying crypto and why that's important.
It's very important. It's very important. So just the smart money, the very smart, the corporations, the people, they realize that our dollar is losing value. And that's why the book that I wrote talks about the buy, borrow, die strategy, where you buy assets and then you borrow from them. Because our money's fake. It's totally fake. I can press a button on a computer and create more money, you know what I mean, in my cell phone. That's how I know it's fake. So these companies, they know that Bitcoin has a very limited supply. So like the government had a gold reserve and an oil reserve. Well, there's only so much Bitcoin that can be created every day. It's around 425 coins a day. There's actually, sorry, 225. There'll only be 21 million Bitcoin that'll ever be created. And basically right now, 95% of it already exists, which means the entire world, all governments, all corporations, and everybody in the entire world is going to have to fight for the remaining 5% of the Bitcoin. And the amount of reserves on all the reserves in the world is going down dramatically. There's about 2.7 million Bitcoin in just the reserves of the entire world. Right now we're about 2.15. So there's 650,000 less Bitcoin available, less available in the supply of the entire world. So it's just simply a supply and demand thing. And the thing is, the government can't devalue this currency like they can the U.S. dollar. So that's why corporations are buying it. They're hedging against the U.S. dollar. So yeah, when I say hedging, we all know the U.S. dollar is going to go down in value. So people like me, we buy Bitcoin, we buy precious metals, we buy real estate, we buy stocks, innovative companies, and GameStop realized that, wow, this is ridiculous. They had tons of money, GameStop, and they thought, well, I'll just go buy a bunch of Bitcoin because Bitcoin's going to go up, the U.S. dollar is going to go down, and it's hard to hire employees and set up stores and stuff. So GameStop followed the strategy.
All right, Mark, we're going to come right back, continue that thought and more with Mark J. Quann, the author of Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes. And we're going to talk about a United States stablecoin and what that means. Don't go anywhere.
Last week's passage of the Genius Act by the Senate, the legislation establishes the very first federal framework for dollar-pegged stablecoins. Circle Internet, Coinbase, and Robinhood seeing massive gains around the vote this month.
Massive gains around the vote for a stablecoin, and a lot of people still asking, what is this stablecoin and why does it matter? We're going to get to the bottom of that with our guest, Mark J. Quann, author of Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes. Mark, what's your thought on the stablecoin that's going to be coming to America?
You know what? We've had at least a stablecoin since, that goes back to 2017, what's called Tether. It was just a coin that was sort of pegged to the U.S. dollar. The only difference is now they're actually going to back it with $1 US or $1 of U.S. debt for each stablecoin. That's a very powerful idea to help all people all around the world that are losing their value. Let's say you're in Venezuela, where their money is not worth toilet paper, or El Salvador. If you're in another country and you're poor, and the government's basically devaluing your currency, every time you earn your money, it's losing value every minute, right? So these people could swap out their currency for stable coins, which would be pegged to the U.S. dollar, and they could actually keep themselves from falling into poverty when the government devalues their money. So it's an interesting thing they're doing. It also gives buyers for U.S. debt, because China doesn't want to buy our debt. There's other countries that don't buy our debt because we're going into debt, $1 trillion every 100 days. So if we don't have buyers for the U.S. debt, we're in trouble. So if they issue these stable coins, that means other people that are falling into poverty are going to buy those stable coins, which would give buyers for U.S. debt. So it helps the United States, and it helps other people around the world that are losing the value of their currencies, because they can swap their currencies out for stable coins and personally buy Bitcoin. So it's a pretty amazing strategy. That genius is the right word with this strategy, because it does so much for people all around the world. The government hates it because the government just likes to print and devalue our money and, send billions of dollars to other countries for, transgender surgeries in other countries. I mean, if they just put the government on the blockchain, the government couldn't spend a penny without the American taxpayer knowing. So obviously the government hates this, or at least they did. That's why they were trying to get rid of Bitcoin. The government wanted a central bank digital currency. That would have been a programmable currency that the government control, and they could just turn you off. Like, we could be on the show, we could be right now, and we could say something that the government didn't like, and they just say, all right, let's cancel Mark and Rich, and let's just turn off their currency. And that's it. We'd lose our house, our home, and we couldn't eat anymore.
Right. So obviously, part of this Genius Act was the anti-CBDC legislation. So with the advent of stablecoin and the ability for more people to purchase the debt of the United States and whatnot, this seems like an economic boon. Would you agree?
It's amazing. It's kind of incredible. The more I see what Trump's doing in the world and how he's tying in everybody, I mean, he's going to help everybody in America. He's going to help, other people in other countries. They're losing their currency. He's going to help the U.S. dollar. So, because here's the thing: if Trump didn't get elected, we were in a lot of trouble in the United States. People have no idea how much trouble we were in if Trump didn't become president. If they would have put in central bank digital currencies, went against Bitcoin, we'd have a government that can just print even faster, right?
Right, and like you said, turn off the funds for people they don't like.
Oh, absolutely. They could literally say, look, hey, Rich, if you walk within 10 feet of your house, more than 10 feet, we're going to turn off your money. Or they could just turn it off. Literally, you lose your home, everything. You couldn't pay your mortgage. They could just cancel people. I mean, they do it in China. That's why China put in CBDCs. Canada loves that idea too, where I'm from. So, originally, but people were things could have got really bad if Trump wasn't elected. I can tell you that. From just But anyways, things are looking good right now. We got all kinds of things happening. Trump's definitely a genius. Like I say, he jokes named after him, but I would agree. It's pretty magical what he's doing right now.
Now, Mark Quann, what else do you think needs to fall into place for everything to make sense? I think one of the bigger pieces of the puzzle to really get the economy moving even faster is lowering interest rates. Your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely lowering interest rates would be an important part of it. That should stimulate all parts of the economy. When you lower interest rates, that's pretty much what it does. So we definitely need that. Obviously, the United States needs to dominate in 4 different areas. Manufacturing, which Trump is working on that, but that's hard to get it going. Building factories takes time. They need to dominate in artificial intelligence, which Trump is really doing well on this one, just bringing AI back into the United States. They need to dominate on Bitcoin reserves, which whatever country buys the most Bitcoin the fastest is the country that will dominate in the future, because every country is devaluing their currencies. They just have to print too much. As the U.S. dollar goes down, Bitcoin naturally goes up in value. That's the thing about it, is that that's just this.
It's kind of like a de facto gold, another hedge.
It is. It's actually far more effective than gold too, because gold, it's hard, you can't bring it around with you. You can't transfer it in the world with a press of a button. It's very hard to do. It's great, but you can't really you can't eat it. I mean, personally, I would do gold, but I could have a brokerage account. I could take a loan from the brokerage account, which is money I didn't have to work or pay taxes on it. I borrow, then I could buy gold, then I can put it in a vault, and then I can take a loan secured by that gold, which is more fiat, fake money, U.S. dollars. I could put that into Bitcoin. Bitcoin could go up. I could borrow against the Bitcoin to buy real estate, and then I could borrow against the real estate to buy another asset, right? And circumventing the U.S. tax system. This is what I wrote. It all ties into Bitcoin. It all ties into the dollars. Basically, most of our money is just 0 ones in a computer, It's created by pressing a button, and it's devalued by pressing buttons. So, every currency. And I would say that regardless of what Trump does, everybody on here should think about the one thing. You can't count on the government to help you. You can't count on Social Security to help you. You can't count on your financial advisor to help you. And you can't count on your CPA to help you. You're the only person who can start to understand this stuff and learn how to use these strategies. So don't rely on anybody else. That would be my biggest.
Folks, that's Mark Quann. Mark, I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Amigos, give him a follow on X, Mark J Quann, and get a copy of his book. I say get 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. Be smart, pay 0 taxes, use the buy, borrow, die strategy to get rich and stay rich. Mark Quann, I want to thank you for being here. Godspeed to you, my friend. And amigos, we'll be back with your calls right now.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, open phones across America. 833-4VALDEZ is the number. We've got calls from Idaho, Naperville, Illinois, Virginia, Ohio, Chicago, and more. Let's go. Who are we? Jim in Naperville, Illinois, WLS. Jim, go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich, you know what? Steve Moore, Mark Levin, and Ronald Reagan were probably back in 1980 were the biggest influences in making me recognize that I was a true conservative. Okay, and going forward. And I'll tell you what, Steve Moore is such a gregarious guy. I actually was able to share a few beers with him with some free popcorn and a string quartet back in at the U of I back in the day. And cool. Man, I'll tell you what an impression that guy made. And I really feel bad. One of my biggest life regrets is that we didn't keep in touch, at that point. And there's other things going on. But I'll tell you what, he is such a great guy, and he's point on. And what he alluded to was that the national security and world peace are tied to Trump's tariffs. And I think you're absolutely correct in your interpretation of it. And that it's much more complex. And what Trump is achieving to bring profitability, world peace, that people don't have to kill each other because everyone's doing well. He's raising up the entire planet.
I think, Jim, I totally get you. I think you're right. And I was wondering why Trump was in Scotland doing this deal and why there was such a big deal. And then when I heard that line that they'd committed to $750 billion of energy purchases from the United States, I knew that was the leverage we needed because we didn't have enough leverage, right? Biden really did a number on this and left this. Trump wasn't lying when he said if he were president, it wouldn't have happened. I agree, because he had leverage at the time. It hadn't happened yet. But now that it happened, it's kind of hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And I think if I had a critique of President Trump, it would be that he really treats Vladimir Putin like a statesman, like a gentleman. And I don't believe that he is. I believe that he is a thug and that he is someone that is, not to be trusted. And I think Trump gives him a lot of grace because I think he thinks smart guy. He's going to make a deal. I don't know. I don't have too much difference in my mind between some of these seedy characters that come out of the Middle East and Vladimir Putin. And I know there's a lot of people listening that take offense to that. There's a lot of pro-Putin patriots, but I'm not one of them. I don't like Putin. Anyway, Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate your thoughts, and you're right. Steve Moore's a heck of a guy. Let us continue. Let us go to Debbie calling us from Canton, Ohio, WNIR. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. How are you?
Hey, Debbie. Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I'm doing okay too. Thank you. I just want to say, if Maxwell goes free in any way, shape, or form, that is terrible. That's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's wrong. Let's just be honest about it, okay? And it'd be
Well, listen, Debbie, I got to tell you, I don't think she's going anywhere. I mean, she's got a 20-year sentence, and if they wanted information they thought she had when she was locked up, they would have asked for it then. I think the only reason that they're going now is to cover bases, but I don't think there's any intention. The only way Ghislaine Maxwell leaves prison early, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I think is in a body bag, just like Jeffrey Epstein did. Outside of that, I think she's got to do her full term, because really, this is all a show. I believe this is her trying to gain some favor, maybe shave a little bit of time off, but Trump doesn't want the negative publicity of saying the only person that's doing jail time right now because of this Jeffrey Epstein ring is this woman, and now we're going to cut her loose. Trump's not that guy. He's got a solid ego, and I love him for it, and I don't think he would allow that to happen. I just my take on things. But thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it. Shout out to WNIR. Shout out to everybody in Ohio. Let us continue. Where do we go now? We want to go to Ralph. Ralph is calling us from Burlington, Vermont, WVMT. Ralph, go right ahead.
Captain Valdez.
Yes,
Good
sir.
to hear from you again.
Likewise, brother. Thank you.
The idea is, my thoughts were, you were speaking of voting with your feet, basically moving along from a certain situation. And I grew up in Vermont. I love Vermont. I ain't freaking going because I can afford it. There's a lot of people, because of the progressives, the socialism, and, it was kind of bubbling up, but then Senator Bernie Sanders accelerated everything.
Yeah,
so
that's your boy,
got
not
to
mine.
the point where right now the NEA owns our legislature. The pension is out of control. Anyhow, long story short, I ain't going nowhere because I love Vermont and I wouldn't go anywhere else. But there's a lot of people that are hightailing it. That's all.
Ralph, good point you're making. Let me tell you something. So when I was a little kid, crime was out of control in New York City, and my family and we did leave. And we came to New Jersey, and there was way less crime, and it was way better. And it's still blue, but still less crime. And Curtis Lewa was a guy that was riding the subways and all the high crime areas, pushing the crack dealers off of 42nd Street. When Rudy Giuliani got elected, Curtis was hand in hand with him, right? Working with the cops on the street to clean up New York into the 90s. And he had a saying, improve, don't move. And he was saying we got to improve the city. You don't just move. We love the city. And listen, I get it. I fell out of love. I fell out of love, not with the city and with the culture and a good bagel and a good slice of pizza. None of that. I love that. I fell out of love with trees that become bald and turn brown. I fell out of love with 6 degrees in the winter or less. I'm done. I'm done with all of that. And so I think for me, that's a big part of it. I don't want to be here, but I get it. A lot of people are leaving because they don't like that they're defunding the police and that, we have the biggest pride parade ever in New York City and all of these things that just make people, I think, uncomfortable and dissatisfied with being New Yorkers. But ultimately, I agree with your statement. I think, I'll take the criticism of cutting and running because I love palm trees and warm weather. I agree with you. Improve, don't move is the way to go. If you love Vermont, you need to stay in Vermont and fight for Vermont and make sure that you leave a better Vermont than you had for your children. I just believe it's so far gone here that I can't do that. And the only way I can provide something good for my children is in a state that has a governor like DeSantis where somebody else is looking out for my kids besides me. And it sucks, but that's the reality. Ralph, I appreciate you and your energy, brother. Keep up the good work. You're a patriot, my man. Don't go anywhere.
is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez, and I want to go to Chicago, Illinois, check in with Julie on WLS. Julie, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, 1 second, please.
Yeah,
oh
make
my
sure
God,
you turn your radio down. Go right ahead, quickly.
Yes. So, I heard your comments earlier about the 72-hour law for holding people with mental illness. And I have to tell you, I think sometimes that's the only tool that someone has to get somebody help, because mental illness is one of those things that can make people behave like they otherwise would not behave.
I agree.
And, I've been in with issues with mental illness within the family and friends, and that's really the only tool available to somebody to try to get a loved one help. And in this situation with the New York shooter, in his suicide note, he wrote that he had some sort of a disorder. Whether he did or imagined he did, I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out soon. But I will really be curious to know what those around him have said, if they have picked up on anything with him. And then the second thing is even if they did, I know it's difficult to know if that will translate into this type of action. But I think we have to get really serious about mental health, and I am actually in favor of strengthening the follow-up to that 72-hour law to get people the help that they need.
Well, I think, and Julia, I appreciate that. I think a lot of people do, and they do so on the basis of emotions, because they feel that pain, the empathy. I try to eliminate all of my personal feelings on that stuff and just think, do I want someone doing that to me if they don't like me? And that's the part that I'm leery about. Amigos, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we are national, and I'm happy to be here. It's a real blessing to be with you. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation. I'd love that. And I know we have a number of people on the line. We're going to get to everybody. San Francisco, Manila, Philippines, Atlanta, Georgia, Virginia Beach, Montreal, Canada. Boise, Idaho is back in there. It was gone for a little bit. So we're going to be getting to your calls. And I want to just run a few things by you. Obviously, I'm looking at a headline here. Associated Press, listen to this. Meat without the animals. Meat that is cultivated from cells with no need to raise or slaughter an animal is now a reality, but it can be made cheaply. Well, it's that question. Can it be made cheaply enough to displace animal agriculture? First of all, how many of you would want to eat? My favorite cut is the ribeye. How many of you would want to eat a ribeye that was not on a living cow that was eating grass one day, but that just rolls off an assembly line and voila, fat and everything? Not me. Now, I'm sure there's some people out there, animal rights people and whatnot, and say, yeah, if we could save the animal and just go straight to... Are you kidding me? That is like saying, yeah, we can have kids without women having to get pregnant or get stretch marks or, gain weight or any of that stuff. No, I'm not here to play God. I'm not here to replace God. I'm not here to do any of those things. So I don't vote for meat without the animals. Personally, I think that's crazy. Another crazy story I just saw here that I wanted to share with you. Where did it go? It's escaping me. Here it is. I laugh because it sounds funny, but this guy, listen, this is a true story. In the men's health section of the New York Post. It's from a while back, but the guy tripped over his cat, and he was already in bad shape because he had a broken neck, a fractured spine, smashed ribs, and blood in his lungs from a car accident because he tripped over his cat. Right? Listen to what the guy says. I can't remember much, just falling very quickly. It was quick, and it was within seconds, and then I was at the bottom. This accident occurred back in October while the musician, the guy was a musician, professional musician, was alone with his hairless Egyptian Sphinx kitten. Disaster struck when the wrinkly kitty was being playful, dove out, latched onto one of its owner's legs while he was coming down the stairs. I don't understand what the driving part is here. It took a bit of a chunk out of his leg. He lost his footing and then tumbled down 14 steps. This is the cat that Dr. Evil holds in the Austin Powers movies. Anyway, I'm not even following this story myself. But anyway, it's true. This guy broke his neck and broke his back and all that stuff from tripping over a cat. I guess he's comparing it to a car accident. Leave it to me to be the one that's very late to the dance here. But not the best written story here in the New York Post. But I wanted to share that with you because I said, man, what a heck of a headline that is. Anyway, why am I talking about that stuff? Because the other stuff is just draining, right? We're talking about war with Russia. Not that we're going to war, but we're trying to avoid war with Russia and end the war that Russia has with Ukraine. We're also talking about, what else did we talk about? This New York City shooter. We've talked about a number of things. And I'm drawing a blank on what I just talked about an hour ago. We talked about Russia. We talked about the economy. We talked about crypto. And let me see. Oh, here's an interesting one. The Russiagate stuff. That seems interesting. So Peter Strzok, S-T-R-Z-O-K, Strzok, good old Peter Strzok, he has now taken all of his Twitter stuff offline. And again, it's been there forever. You know, all of the tweets that he was mentioned in and blah, blah, blah. Didn't bother him before. I guess he thought he was above the law. But now it's all gone. And I wonder why. Why would he take it down now in 2025? Why wouldn't he have waited? Why wouldn't he have done it immediately? Why did he wait is the question. So, interesting. We'll see what happens to him. A few conversations we've had this week seem to indicate that there's no consequence for President Obama but for impeaching him after the fact. And there could be lots of penalties for everybody else that was involved here. So we'll see how that goes. I think the largest detriment to them is this black eye that they have to wear with them forever, right? Trump is going to walk away seemingly vindicated, right? After everybody said he was a Russian agent, he was this, and he was doing that with this one and this one with that one. All of it was disproved. And it's as they were referred to many times, the dirty cops were the ones that were responsible for it. So very interesting stuff there. There was something else I wanted to get to. Forgive me for being scatterbrained. I didn't have as much coffee as I normally do. I drink a Puerto Rican coffee called El Coqui, which is the little frog that makes the lovely music when you visit Puerto Rico. And that stuff is strong, but when you come off of it, and I'm like 3 hours away from my last cup, so I'm starting my crash. Anyway, I don't want to bore you with the details of my coffee addiction, but I do want to get into a few things. Recently, there was some closure with the Idaho murders, right? Those co-eds that were killed by the teaching assistant up there, and that was a wild case, right? It took a lot of effort to figure out, and the guy was like, "Wasn't me," and it was just, the whole thing was just horrific, and mainly because they're young kids and, you know, they had whole lives ahead of them. But the people that are related to the victim are entitled to join the victim or, in lieu of the victims, give a victim impact statement in the courtroom. And these things can oftentimes be very emotional. And in a little bit, we're going to hear the victim impact statement from one of the family members. And I got to tell you, that stuff is never for the weak, right? You've got to be strong to even give a speech like that. I don't know. For those of you who've lost parents, I remember giving a eulogy for both my mom and my dad, and I was a mess. I was a mess, as many people are. But these are normal occurrences in life, right? Losing your parents. It's not a normal occurrence to lose a child or someone that's younger than you in your family. So kudos to them, Godspeed to them, prayers for peace, because that's never easy. And I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about another legal issue, the Epstein stuff. And I think we've put that to bed by and large. People said you got to go see Ghislaine Maxwell. Todd Blanche went and saw Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't believe that there's any new or majorly impactful information there, but maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe Todd Blanche comes back and says, boy, man, they did a bad job when they locked this person up and they didn't give her a deal and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know, he's given her a deal, but I know she's given him some additional information, and it could be a different play, right? Maybe she just needs the news people to report that so that others elsewhere get nervous. Maybe, she's angling for something. What? I don't know. Maybe we could let our imaginations run wild with that. But we're going to get some input and analysis on that from somebody you see on TV all the time. You see her on Fox and on Newsmax. She's an attorney and a legal analyst. Jonna Spilbor is scheduled to be with us in a little bit to help us make sense of those things. And, of course, your calls, right? We've got plenty of calls, like I said, from all over the country, and we're going to get with you guys momentarily. So thanks for your patience. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Jesus has allowed me to forgive you for murdering my daughter without you even being sorry or asking for this. This is only possible because he who lives in me is greater than any evil in this world. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. I do not fear you or even let you rent space in my head anymore. This forgiveness has released me from any and all evil you have inflicted on me and my family. It has allowed me to let our Lord deal with you. You have accepted a deal that will prevent you from receiving the death penalty. Nothing man can do to you can ever compare.
That is the mom of one of the victims in Idaho in that murder of multiple college kids, Kara Northington, talking about Koberger. I think Kevin Koberger is his name. And that was her victim impact statement in court, courtesy of News Nation. And let me tell you, kudos to her for having the courage to do that. I haven't talked about this case in a while, and that's why I wanted to bring in one of the big guns. Jonna Spilbor is a very popular attorney that you've seen all over television. In fact, I saw her on television this weekend, and she's terrific. She's the founder of Jonna Spilbor Law Firm. Her website, jonnaspilbor.com, and you can get her on Twitter at Jonna Spilbor Law. Jonna Spilbor, welcome.
Rich, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for staying up late with us. And Jonna, I want to get into a little bit of your thoughts and your both your legal analysis and your opinion as well on how this case that I think was kind of wild. It took a while to figure out. And the character, right? The alleged murderer, or I guess now he's going to be convicted murderer, He was very indifferent, like a real psycho. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I watched much of the victim impact statements and his non-reaction. Like, I think probably for the first time in this case, which has been around. I think the killings happened back in 2022. I want to say November 2022. This has been a long time coming for these families, and the total black hole of a look on this man's face as he was listening to victim impact statement after victim impact statement. You finally got a true sense of what kind of non-human being this defendant was. It was really remarkable. And can I just say something else real quick?
Of course.
About the case itself. I do want to dig into the victim impact statements, but something really irked me, other than the obvious, Rich, about the case, other than the gruesomeness of the crimes and that, it tested some initial scientific theories that are really untested in criminal court, like the genetic genealogy, how you can now connect somebody to a crime without having their DNA necessarily, but connecting them through a family member. And that kind of thing was all a little bit fascinating in the beginning. But what irked me was that his defense team, Brian Kohberger's defense team, very soon before he finally took a plea, was actually trying to make a motion to get permission to bring in a third-party defense theory. So that is so significant from where I sit as a criminal defense attorney. They were going to try to sell to this jury and to the judge that somebody else other than Kohberger was responsible for these murders. But then when that petition, that motion got shot down by the judge, it was a 180. Like, okay, so you're not going to let me say some other dude did it? That's what we call that defense. Well, all right, then I guess you got me. He's going to plead guilty. That was a very odd turnaround. That was almost fraudulent to me on the part of the defense team to try to float that kind of theory if they knew darn well that a guilty plea was imminent had they failed, and they did.
Jonna, why would that happen? Like, why do they allow that? If it seems so out of place for an officer of the court like you, and I'm sure others probably picked up on that, why doesn't anybody call this stuff out?
Look, defense attorneys have a tough job. Do not get me wrong. We have a very tough job. And one of the many nuances of representing somebody who's accused of a crime is we don't always know, and we don't always ask. This might surprise your audience. We don't always ask a client whether they're guilty. Our job is to take the evidence that the prosecution is going to procure and try to connect the dots to see whether or not a prosecutor can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a client did X, Y, and Z. That is our job. Our job is also to make sure that their civil rights are protected. Our job is to make sure that the police do right when they are effectuating an arrest. Our job is not to discern whether or not a client is guilty of the crime. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes our clients tell us, and sometimes we do ask. And I have to wonder behind the scenes in this gruesome case whether the defense attorneys did not ask, whether they presented, here's the evidence, you've got a good chance of going to the chair because you have a good chance of being found guilty, so let's talk turkey here, or whether they were just trying to do the best job they could by him knowing full well that he was guilty. And we'll never know. We will never know that part of this gruesome case. Yeah.
Folks, we're on with Jonna Spilbor. Do you feel, Jonna, that as a criminal defense attorney, do you think that this was an adequate, adjudication of this at the end?
You could sense from the families, right? We all sense from the families. So many of them would love to see Brian Kohberger literally fry. And who could blame them? Who could blame them? But here's the thing, a death penalty case means that it will not be put to bed. A surviving family member will not see closure for decades. Why? Because if the defendant is found guilty and if the defendant is sentenced to death, there are automatic appeals, and they are not short appeals. They are long appeals. That's probably one of the beefs that so many people have with the death penalty is if you're okay with it, if you're okay with taking the life of somebody who's done something wrong, significantly wrong, why does it take so long? And it has to wind its way through the system. So the family members really do not get closure. And could you imagine what would happen if he weren't found guilty? These family members would never get closure.
It'd be like a death blow.
It would. And in a sense, that was the trade-off. That was that he's never going to see the light of day. He will die in prison. And between me and you, it won't be of old age, Rich. It will not be of old age.
I believe that. Jonna, stand by. Folks, that's New York criminal defense attorney Jonna Spilbor. She's joining us, and we're going to continue. We're going to talk a little Epstein files when we return. She's joining us from the Hudson Valley of New York, where we have amazing affiliates like 92.5, 94.3, 96.5, The Beacon. Check us out on one of those stations if you're in the Hudson Valley of New York, and we're coming right back with Jonna Spilbor. I'm Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
This morning, a bipartisan push to force the Trump administration to release all unclassified records about deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
It's the force of law, and it's got protections to redact victims' names and to prevent, release of child pornography.
President Trump is struggling to shake off a controversy over Epstein he once stoked, but now calls a hoax and a Democratic con job.
I'm focused on making deals. I'm not focused on conspiracy theories that you are.
Sources previously told ABC News the Justice Department devoted about 1,000 people to reviewing the Epstein files. Speaker Mike Johnson sending members of the House home until September to avoid a vote on the issue.
I'll tell you what's politically going to be a liability is if we don't vote on this and we go into the midterms and everybody just check out because Republicans didn't keep their promise in Donald Trump, we'll lose the majority.
Massey's Democratic co-sponsor Ro Khanna said Epstein's co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell should testify before Congress, but he said given her past statements, the Justice Department should also release the file.
So the Epstein stuff continues, and while people want stuff, it doesn't seem like the people that are in charge, meaning President Trump and the rest of the folks in government, are putting a lot of emphasis on this because there's many other fish to fry, not to mention bigger fish to fry. But that's just me. What do I know? Let's get some legal opinion here from our guest, Jonna Spilbor. She's an attorney on television. You've seen her on Fox. You've seen her on Newsmax. You've seen her in lots of places. And she is the founder of Jonna Spilbor Law Firm, and you can get her online as well at Jonna Spilbor Law on Twitter and JonnaSpilbor.com on the internet. And Jonna Spilbor, talk to me. Give us some reaction and analysis to the latest with these Epstein goings on.
I think I agree with you and our president. I understand why President Trump doesn't want to spend a whole lot of time on the Epstein files because we are looking forward, not backward. Epstein is dead. I completely get that. But, I also believe that members of Congress, most especially the Democrats, are being a little disingenuous when they call for releasing, quote, all of the Epstein files, because what they really want, the one thing they really want, is this so-called infamous, probably invisible list. That's what they want. But they should be very careful what they wish for, because I have my own theory of whether or not this list exists and what happened to it, because, I followed Ghislaine Maxwell's prosecution from the get-go. And I thought it was very odd that she was arrested, but that's a subject for, a future show. But I will say that she was prosecuted not by, even though she was arrested under Trump's first administration, she was prosecuted by the underlings of the Biden administration. And the Biden administration is the administration that said, hey, there's a list. We have a list. Ooh, this list. You know darn well that if there was a list, and if that list implicated a single Republican, we would have known about it a long time ago.
Let alone Trump.
Exactly. So what did the list ever exist? Was this a hoax by the Biden administration? What were they trying to cover up? Why did they want to keep Ghislaine Maxwell quiet? Why did they never interview her, not a single time, when they conducted their prosecution? There are so many weird oddities about the way in which Ghislaine Maxwell's case was handled and prosecuted, why she was arrested to begin with, that it really, I have to agree with Donald Trump. When he uses the word hoax, that's what I feel. Perhaps we all got led down the primrose path by the Biden administration to cover something up, or for whatever nefarious reason they may have. We'll never get to the bottom. We will never get to the true bottom of the whole Epstein saga because Epstein is dead. I do think it's very valuable to speak to Ghislaine, and I know that Ghislaine Maxwell is going to be telling Todd Blanche that she was not provided a fair trial. And again, some people may not like what I have to say about this, but I tend to agree that she was not provided a fair trial. And I think we're going to find some very interesting information once they're done talking.
Well, let's go down that rabbit hole just a little bit, because again, we may not know everything for sure. But Jonna Spilbor, what do you think was, I guess, defective in her first go round with her trial?
So there are a couple of things. The major point, and I believe the basis for, she's got a petition now that she's trying to have. When I say she, I mean Ghislaine Maxwell, before the Supreme Court. One of the main complaints is that the prosecution, again, Biden's people, withheld exculpatory evidence. That's what we call a Brady violation. A Brady violation is probably one of the biggest violations a prosecutor can commit in connection with a prosecution. And if you think about, well, is the Biden administration, was the DOJ, the Southern District of New York, capable of hiding exculpatory information? Well, when you look at this big picture that we're all claiming, wait a minute, there's no list, is this a hoax? Of course it's possible that may have come to light, but also take it back a step further. Why was she arrested to begin with? You know, people don't realize this because of the way she was prosecuted, but her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein ended years before his first prosecution. So if anybody wanted to arrest Ghislaine Maxwell and prosecute her, why didn't they do it the first time Jeffrey Epstein was arrested? They hadn't had a relationship for over 20 years. Then they wait again until a year after he's dead before they go and arrest Ghislaine Maxwell. What was up with that? It's just an anomaly. It doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, she brings up, and this may have legs as well, we'll see if the Supreme Court takes it up, that when Jeffrey Epstein was prosecuted the first time in Florida and for the sweetheart deal, which it was a sweetheart deal, and there was an agreement that nobody else was going to be prosecuted, everybody else was going to get immunity, why was that then violated 20 years, almost 20 years later and a year after Epstein's death? Why? And then we have this list, and now nobody can find the list, and Biden administration is the one who put forth the promise of this list. I think it could be a rabbit hole. We could be going down a very deep rabbit hole, and I think that's another reason why Donald Trump is saying, let's not do that. We're going forward. Let's not go down this deep rabbit hole. I get it. But I am interested to find out how the conversations between Ghislaine Maxwell and Todd Blanche are going, or have went, if they're concluded at this point.
Yeah, and I'd heard a couple of reports that she'd provided a lot of information from her attorney, but I think that's about as reliable as my own speculation, right? He's going to tell us what he wants us to know, not what's really going on. Jonna Spilbor is our guest. Jonna, I wanted to ask you a question related to to this stuff with Ghislaine Maxwell. A lot of people have made this argument, which I feel is a false equivalency. Not in her defense. I just think it's illogical to say if there's no client list, then why am I in jail? As if, the meme with Ghislaine Maxwell. I get it if you want to try and be pithy, but in reality, I'm thinking if you're a drug dealer and you help people procure drugs and you get arrested for that, there may not be a list of people that bought the drugs, but you're still going to jail, and that happens every day. So why is it different in this case? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong in your analogy. That is true. People who help other people buy drugs as co-conspirators do get arrested and they get charged, they get convicted. I think in this case, though, if you were to take Ghislaine Maxwell's side of things, and I've said this before, you can know where the bodies are buried without having helped bury them. And one of the things that the prosecution has never done was to say, well, wait a minute, what information does Ghislaine Maxwell have, not as a defendant, but rather as a witness? But once Jeffrey Epstein died, right, then all the witnesses are worthless because you can't prosecute him. He's dead.
Right.
So, her position, I believe, I haven't heard this from her mouth, would be, wait a minute, I know things, but I did not do things. And that's equally as possible and plausible as your analogy, right? If you have a spouse that drinks and drives, and they get in the car and they drink and drive, and you knew that they were going to drink and drive, you're not going to get arrested for drunk driving, but they will,
Right.
So it's along those lines.
Got it. Well, I want to thank you for being here and clarifying some of this stuff. As we get more news on it, hopefully you'll come back. Jonna, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the great work you're doing.
Well, and thank you for that, and thank you very much for having me. And I am so easy
Pleasure.
to find, Rich. So all you have to do, if anybody wanted to get to know me or get some information from me, you can find me at jonnaspilbor.com is our main website. And I'm all over Instagram, Facebook, just my name, Jonna Spilbor. You'll find me there. And hopefully I'll get to see you again in the studios at Newsmax real soon.
I hope we do. I'm looking forward to it. Jonna Spilbor, and we're going to get you in the studio here at the World Trade Center as well so that you could do a one-on-one with me live in the studio. Jonna Spilbor, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being here. Godspeed.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And amigos, we go to your calls right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You have said that you have not been briefed on the Epstein files, or your name has not appeared in the Epstein files. But doesn't the AG have to tell you if your name is...
Well, I haven't been overly interested in it. It's a hoax that's been built up way beyond proportion. I can say this, those files were run by the worst scum on earth. They were run by Comey, they were run by Garland, they were run by Biden and all of the people that actually ran the government, including the auto pen. Those files were run for 4 years by those people. If they had anything, I assume they would have released it.
That is El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. And I think he's onto something here. But there's always people out there that want to disagree, and one of those is named David from San Francisco, California, calling us on the world-famous KSFO. David, go right ahead, sir.
Well, thanks, Rich, although sorry to hear you're soft on crime. Donald Trump is organized crime, and Jeffrey Epstein was clearly as well. And if you're not interested in finding out the truth, then that bodes badly for America. I was interested in Ron Wyden. He's the senator from Oregon, and he's recently disclosed that there are hundreds of millions, well, there's well over $1 billion of financial transactions that really haven't been investigated. And it's pretty easy to look those up online. There's a Senate page that has a description of it. But you're familiar with the concept of check kiting, right?
I've heard of it. But we don't have all night, so I can't get into the concept. You got to make your bottom line. You got to make it quickly.
Okay, check kiting is when one crook mails a check to another crook, and they just mail them back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the bank always thinks that they have high assets, but in fact, it's the same phony money that's being sent back and forth. And check kiting is basically an old technique that it's been around for centuries. And when you start looking at whether or not Jeffrey Epstein was really rich, or whether Donald Trump was really rich, or whether they were just check kiting each other, and the same goes through with Trump and Putin. Are they just check kiting each other, pretending that they're rich, and they're just filling each other's bank accounts up? And
I mean, that might make sense if there was any checks going back and forth between Putin and Trump. There isn't. So, I mean, there were some checks that went back and forth between James Biden and Joe Biden. I think some people suspect that might have been check kiting. I think and they're the ones that suspect it because they didn't want it to look like they were bringing in money from, the endeavors of Hunter Biden at all. But I think the call started out about Jeffrey Epstein. That's why I try to give you a lot of time. I give you more than everybody else. I give you 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Everybody else gets about 1:20. And I want America to hear your logic. And I'm pretty sure of the 10 people we have on hold and the 6 million people listening, that nobody was able to follow the logic here. You went from Trump to Epstein to attacking me to attacking, I don't know what you were even calling about, but thank you. This was one of the best liberal calls I've had in a while. Let us continue. Let's go to I can't hear. See, it's got to be quick though. Let's go to Gil, Manila, Philippines. Gil, go right ahead, sir.
Oh, actually, I'm still in San Antonio, Rich.
Oh, even better. I love it when you're in America.
Yeah, but because of the time, I can't listen to your show as religiously as before. But I didn't think I heard any mention of the passing of John Fielner, the founder of the Heritage Foundation.
Yes, last week, right? Alex Hinton sent me an email on that, and if I thought I mentioned something on air, and if I didn't, I am remiss. But Ed Fielner, the founder of the Heritage Foundation, passing away, and what an amazing body of work they've left our country and continued to do. Gil, how are you feeling, by the way?
Well, actually, I was in the hospital for a week. I had a cardiac incident, but they say it's under control. So I'm going to have some surgery for that. You get old and your body wears out. It's like an old automobile. You gotta change the part. But one quick thing, if I can, about tariffs. Okay, when Donald Trump redid the old NAFTA, one of the reasons he did it was the unfair nature of our situation between the U.S. and Mexico. Mexico has a taxing system called value-added tax.
Yeah, the VAT tax.
16%. Well, that value-added tax was put into the price that Americans had to pay for those Mexican manufactured goods. So we were subsidizing the Mexican government 13 is 16%. And Donald Trump saw that, and that was one of the reasons he wanted to redo the North American Free Trade Agreement that's now
USMCA.
Right. But that was one of the reasons he did it. So actually, with these tariffs, we have our own version of a value-added tax to foreign goods coming into the country.
But, Gil, you're right. And I've always looked at this tariff system as really, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, as an optional import tax. If you want something that's imported because you can't or won't buy an American alternative to it, then you pay your import tax. Otherwise, don't. And try and procure something that's, manufactured in the U.S. I think it's a fantastic system because it's, in some cases, in many, I would say, it's voluntary. Gil, I got to take a pause here. Amigos, we come back to the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. We've got Paul in Boise, Idaho, KBFI, Tony in Montreal, Canada, WVMT. So I'm going to read these as we go because we're limited on time. I'm told I have 12 seconds until I hear the music. Look at that, 3. So the deep state and Putin are afraid of losing the war. I agree with that. This show needs to be on Sirius XM. Tony, from your lips to God's ears. Georgia Tech kids are hacking into the Oval Office. Jeff, if you could call back on this one, I'd love to talk about that. Let me see. Steve, too many pedos altogether. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care and God bless.